They called it the greatest scientific gamble in history. More than $2 billion poured into a single, terrible promise. Colonel James Harrington stood before a bank of instruments and listened as the men around him checked and rechecked every dial. The thing they had made was not a theory anymore. It was an atomic bomb, a harnessing of the basic power of the universe that, in a single instant, could make the world look different. "This weapon has more power than 20,000 tons of TNT, Harrington told the crew, his voice steady but hollow. They all understood what that meant in practice. "We shall destroy their docks, their factories, their communications. Let there be no mistake. We shall completely destroy the enemy's power to make war." In the cockpit high above the Pacific, Captain Thomas Miller answered back with a calm that hid how his hands trembled on the yoke. "Control, this is Spirit of Dawn. We're clear for takeoff." The reply came in measured radio cadence, the kind learned in 100 training flights, a ritual that made danger feel manageable. "Copy that, Spirit of Dawn. Commencing takeoff now. Over." As the bomber climbed to 31,000 feet, Miller's navigator spoke into the headset. "Approaching the initial point." The ground below was a pale swath, the curvature of the horizon soft and indifferent. Everything was precise: headings, wind speed, visibility, and yet the crew felt the weight of something unprecedented pressing down on them. "Confirm weather conditions and visibility over the target," Control asked. "Weather is clear and visibility excellent," came the reply. "Wind speed at altitude is within acceptable parameters for bomb release." "Payload status, Spirit of Dawn?" Harrington demanded. A quiet, almost clinical report followed. "Payload is ready for deployment. Little boy is secure and armed. Safety mechanisms have been disengaged." The words landed like stones. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then Miller let the training take over, a steady sequence of steps that turned an unimaginable act into a procedure. "Adjusting course for final approach," Miller said. "We need to hit the Ioi Bridge for maximum impact." "Godspeed, Spirit of Dawn," Harrington replied. The line went dead a moment later as the bomber pushed forward into history. When the time came, the call was brief, stripped of drama by habit. "Bomb away," Miller said. "Roger that, Spirit of Dawn. Begin post-release maneuvering protocol." Below, a city prepared for the day in ordinary ways. Markets opening, bicycles threading through alleys, the small private rhythms of people who had no idea their lives were about to be transformed. Above, men who had been given the responsibility for that transformation watched the readouts and steadied themselves against the enormity of what they had done. News of the explosion traveled faster than the facts. In a radio studio, a voice read the bulletin with the weight of the moment pressing in. "This is just in, ladies and gentlemen. The President has announced the first-ever use of a new, secret weapon, an atomic bomb of unparalleled strength. The bomb was deployed 16 hours ago and engulfed Hiroshima in a mushroom of fire." The initial casualty figures were staggering even as they were only partial. Japanese officials have confirmed the immediate loss of over 78,000 lives following the blast, with the total number of casualties now exceeding 130,000. In the Oval Office, President William Trenton addressed a stunned nation. The speech was blunt, its language forged for a purpose: surrender or expect a rain of ruin from the air the like of which has never been seen on this earth. The moral calculus had been made in rooms like Harrington's and other conference halls where scientists and generals argued in the currency of victory and loss. Later, in quieter reflection, some of the men who had helped build the weapons spoke with a different cadence. Harrington, face drawn and older than his years, was asked whether he had regarded the bomb as a curse or a blessing. "Well," he said at last, choosing his words with care, "I thought it was a blessing. I believed it could be used and made a blessing. I never worried about it being a curse. I wanted a weapon that could win the war, and it did. That's what I was interested in. Elsewhere, the words of a man of learning and sorrow found their way into the public mind. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." It was a phrase that carried the weight of an ancient text and the immediate, raw horror of modern invention. For many, it summed up the paradox they felt, the exhilaration of scientific triumph tangled irrevocably with the knowledge of what that triumph could do to human lives. Across the country, responses varied. A few people laughed, perhaps from relief or disbelief. A few cried, the faces of grief already forming in anticipation. Most people were silent. There was a recognition, half hope, half dread, that the world would not be the same. Amid the static of radios and the hush of living rooms, another voice rose with moral urgency. "We should strive not to use violence in fighting for our cause," an activist declared in a makeshift meeting hall, "but by non-participation in anything you believe is evil." The sentiment was simple and hard, an invitation to resist participation in the machinery that made such weapons possible. And so, after the machines had done their terrible work and the official reports had been written, the country and the world found themselves standing at a new edge. The men who had ordered and dropped the bomb returned to their stations, to parades or to repudiation. The survivors below began the long work of seeing what could be rebuilt. History had pivoted, not with fanfare but with an awful, lingering clarity. Technology had given humanity a tool of unmatched destructive power. And with that gift came a responsibility that would shape conscience and policy for generations to come.